Missouri Governor Mike Parson is taking an executive action on unregulated strains of cannabis.
That's right. Starting in 1 month, Missouri will ban the sale of any intoxicating hemp products such as Delta-8 and Delta-10 THC in stores. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean is in Jefferson City with more on this new order.
This all gets to the heart of what is defined by law as cannabis and what is not. You see, the state technically regulates a chemical within cannabis plants called sometimes Delta-9. But if you change one little part of the chemical compound, it becomes Delta-8 or Delta-10. Those act very similar, but they're not technically regulated. That all changes September 1st.
These are the two products a child would see if they went into a store. And you can compare them side by side to see what they are.
One is the normal product. The other is infused with THC, the type derived from hemp, not cannabis. Still, their effect can be very similar to weed. That's why Parson said this type of advertising practice is dangerous, particularly for young children.
This is where the center of our issue lies, concerns for the safety of Missouri children. These packages are not clearly labeled.
Parson's executive order means starting September 1st, the sale of any intoxicating THC will be banned unless it's from a state-approved source. And right now, there's no process for the state to approve a source, meaning until further notice, selling these products is effectively banned altogether.
Public safety is about protecting people from harm and reducing hazards, particularly when it comes to innocent children and vulnerable populations.
But many retailers say the state taking such a sweeping action hurts other vulnerable populations. John Grady works with his wife marketing their hemp-infused drinks not to kids, but to veterans and those with challenging medical issues.
We are not trying to sell these dangerous products to children. In fact, we've been coming to the Capitol since 2022 asking legislators to work with us on legislation.
In fact, the Missouri Hemp Trade Association has long pleaded for age restrictions, product testing requirements, and other regulations, which most of them claim to impose anyway. The executive order only affects the sale of these products, meaning it won't impact consumers who have or use them. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, WGEM News.